and that is what you see when there are proposals and you act as an evaluator, is that, of course, there are a lot of opportunities in the European research program, but all these are supposed to address challenges that are formulated by the European Commission. And what you see a lot of times is that people see it as a kind of diving board to go for their own priorities and try to fit the call into what they are willing to do, and most often what they want funding for. And that, of course, the idea is that it should be the other way around. If you have some brilliant solution to the challenge of the European Commission, then that would be a fit. But do not try to fit the European the call of the European Commission in what you would like to do. You could say roughly that 50% of the proposals that are submitted make this mistake, and they do not make it. They do not make it through the threshold for getting funding. Then, yeah, of course, as Australia is not part of the European Union, the options are more limited to participate in the research program. I focus very much on the research. There are other cooperation programs as well. So you will have to scan the work programs for topics that are interesting for you. And then, of course, the easiest one, and I think the two projects that COALA and WaterSENSE that organized this meeting today have benefited from a call that was specifically dedicated to European-Australian cooperation. So that is, of course, the easy part, because then you are in. But there are also a lot of calls that are dedicated to international cooperation as such. And that means that it is open for parties. Also, it depends a bit on the call, but mostly it's open for parties outside the European Union as well. And of course, in any proposal, there is a possibility that you can participate as a third party, but then you need really to demonstrate that you have specific added value, so expertise, etc., research infrastructure. So that is something that is a bit more tricky in a sense, and you should check it right at the start before you begin forming your consortium, if this added value is really there. Then some things just yeah, there are information days on the cooperation between Europe and Australia. So there's a YouTube video, so I put the link here. And also there's, of course, there are national contact points for this cooperation. There's one, at least that I found in Australia, and another one in Brussels. So there's a link as well where you can find them. And there is, in relation to funding, is EURAccess that is active in many countries. So also in Australia, and they provide support to researchers who will temporarily move to another country. But they also say they provide advice on funding opportunities, etc., etc. So with that, I would like to end this introduction. Next slide, please, Willem. Yeah, my email address is here for yeah, if you want to have additional information on my experience. But let's discuss now in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just check the make sure I don't need to add whether I need to add anyone. We'll get to that later. No, I think we're all good. floor to, I think, Guido and Carlo. Are you doing a joint presentation, or are each of you going to do a presentation? So what if either of you want to share the screen and kick off?
Yeah. Maybe I can start to share the screen, and I also share the presentation with Guido.
Right. So I'll just give a quick introduction. So Guido and Carlo are both from COALA. Mark was actually from WaterSENSE, just to try and put it into picture. I probably should have given that introduction beforehand. So we have two projects here, WaterSENSE and COALA, both through that funded through Horizon 2020. And yeah, that's why we try to organize this workshop. Carlo, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me this morning to this workshop, which is very interesting for me. Also to share our experience in COALA, and maybe to try to find new possibilities for further activities. COALA is an H2020 project started at the beginning of 2020, so it's not so good year for cooperation between Europe and Australia due to the COVID. COALA stands for Copernicus Application and Services for Low Impact Agriculture in Australia. So we use this name because it is important to have a real good integration between the experience in Europe and in Australia. It is founded under H2020 in dedicated call, which permits to have also partner from Australia, and also this partner are completely part of the consortium in the sense that they also receive funding from a European Commission, which is, as Mark said before, which is not common in other kind of call. What is the idea behind COALA? The idea is to try to transfer European expertise and try to improve this expertise with the local partner institution, SME, as I will show later, trying to exploit better the knowledge of European in use of satellite data in Europe and services which are developed in Europe, and try to fit these services in Australia along with the experience of the local partner. Basically, our COALA offer services based on Earth observation application, and try to develop these added value products, and try to put this product to improve the process that for agriculture. The other important things behind COALA is that we want to provide this kind of services using application program interface. Later, Francesco will show a real little example of that. So the idea is not to provide another platform, another system, but just to provide services and data, and try to integrate this data and the services in existing platform that agricultural professional farmers already use there. This is just an overview of the consortium. Is a small, quite big consortium for this small call funded by European Commission. We have European SMA, RE-SPACE. I'm the coordinator of the project, but also the director of RE-SPACE, and AgriSat, which is another company from Spain. Both companies are spin-off of university, RE-SPACE University of Naples in Italy, and AgriSat University of Castilla-La Mancha in Spain. We have also another company, WaterSENSE, which help us to improve the business model, to try to go behind the end of the project. We have the different research institution from Europe, University of Castilla-La Mancha, Alfonso is here representing them, Boco University, Francesco is from Boco University, and two Australian University of Melbourne, Don Griol is there, and also University of New South Wales from Sydney. I think Graciela, I don't know if she can join to this meeting. We have European local users and users to a water user association, one from Italy, ANBI, and one from Spain, which have long expertise in using Earth observation for monitoring and managing the water resources in agriculture and also of other agricultural input. And finally, but it's very important for us because to produce a very good services, we need to involve all the final users from the beginning. We have IREC, a new one, partners, which provide consultancy for different final users, which can be the irrigation operators, but also farmer. And BCG, Kate is here representing BCG, which is an agricultural consultancy, and they work very well and in many different parts of Australia with farmer providing consultancy. So the idea is this very different. We have very different skills in the consortium, and this is very important because we try to put all together the experience, the past experience in Europe. Try to improve our services using the expertise of European university, but also from Australian University of Melbourne is really active to try to validate the data and the services. And we try to transfer the experience of the final user in Europe, ANBI and GRMCO, to local users in Australia. We speak during our project about business users in the sense that we want to try to address our services directly to the people and companies and other operators that work directly with the final users, which are in our case irrigation operators, water manager at different scales, but also farmer. Why Australia? But in my experience, I was there a few years ago. In my experience, Australia is the best place to try to develop this kind of services for many reasons. The first one is that we have an advanced environment from the technical point of view, and also we have a very in many cases very young farmers that are very interested in using this kind of technologies, but also because Australia is one of the most important area for agricultural production, and I think that Earth observation can help in better use the inputs in agricultural activities. We also have an expertise and experience in Australia because we had a small company there. Now this company is closed for other reason, but the idea that I have is that Australia can be the best place to exploit all the information provided by Sentinels and Copernicus program. Okay, Guido, if you want, you can go ahead, starting from this slide.
Yes, well, the idea that COALA has a multi-scale approach, which provides products, AO-based products at different scale, moving from the farm scale and going up to irrigation infrastructures operators, and furthermore to basin and national authorities. And we try to address the main, let's say, interest at the production level, that is water management, nutrient management. And the products are conceived in such a way that they are valid through the scales of the application, from the farm to the basin authority, and they address a number of items. So starting from the crop evapotranspiration, as you can see in the slide, up to the information about the status of nutrition at canopy level, to derive variable fertilization maps, and finally to predict crop yield. So it's a bunch of products which are based on and partly on existing technology developed in past European projects by some of the consortium partners, but also try to include some innovation, as I show in a moment. If you can show me the next slide, Carlo, please. And which is to completely exploit the capability of Copernicus, and in particular the spectral capabilities of the Sentinel-2A and B bands on one hand, and on the other hand also in response to a specific call request to exploit the utilization of DIAS, these data information and access services, in order to speed up the processing and make the products readily available from the cloud. And these providers are also available now within the Copernicus program. Next, Carlo, please. So besides the past experience, we are developing new approaches that try to infer information about the possible occurrence of water stress conditions by using the shortwave infrared bands of Sentinel-2. So this is an improvement of the classical, let's say, combination equation approach, let's say Penman-Monteith, FAO. So resistance-based models where we modulate the values of surface resistances by means of shortwave infrared band. And this approach has been tested in conditions similar to Australia, in irrigated vineyards in California, during an extensive experiment called GRAPEX, which has been published recently. Next, Carlo, please. And also on the side of nutrition, so the concept of nitrogen nutrition index, NNAI, is used based on exploration of Alfonso Calera, my colleague from University Castilla-La Mancha, will explain that in details later on, based on the analysis of dense time series of vegetation indexes and ancillary information from the field to not only estimate the status of growth of the canopy and so predict yield, but also to get prescription maps for fertilization, entirely based from a remote sensing approach. As Carlo mentioned earlier, the idea is that we will use API, this programming interface, which are meant to include COALA products into existing platforms. So the idea is not to propose another tool, another platform, but just the mean to incorporate COALA products into existing application. And this is particularly important in Australia, where already there are a number of platforms which have been used by, for different reasons, by different type of users, from agricultural consultancy company to water managers and so on, that now they can easily access COALA product by accessing the DIAS, the dedicated DIAS that is being developed. And another very important information is that we focus on B2B users, which act as intermediate partners with the final users, which are farmers, water managers, and basin authorities, which are basically sharing the same information, which is also important. Next, Carlo, thanks. Of course, the approach cannot be just taken out from the shell of our European experience and transported to Australia, but we wanted to capitalize as much as possible the very high experience in the field of remote sensing, hydrology, and agriculture available at different levels in Australia. And that's why our IOC partners are in charge of validating the services through intensive field campaign measurements, mainly for CALVAL purposes. So at the end of the project, we will have totally validated technology available for Australian users. And this was all from my point of view. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you also from me. We have here some links to our website and also to our to some videos that we can see, watch on the internet, and our email if you want to have further information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. There was applause on this end. Sorry, I didn't have the microphone on, but there was a bit of applause on this this end in the room. So just letting you know. All right, thank you very much. That was very good and interesting to see a bit of an overview. So I will switch over, and now I will try and demonstrate and do my presentation for WaterSENSE. So I have been given the task to give an overview of that. So I will just try and see if I can do this correctly while I'm trying to do other things. I'm just going to check whether there's anyone else I need to. Well, we'll deal with the rest of the people on the when we get to the Q&A session. Okay, I'm sharing my screen just so we have the presentation. Yes, okay, can you all see that? I'm assuming you can. So, so our Horizon 2020 project is called WaterSENSE, and WaterSENSE consists of see if I can get rid of this panel. Okay, it consists of a group of companies in the Netherlands, in Germany, in Portugal, and the University of Sydney. So that's the combination of partners within this group. So we have eLeaf, Hydrologic, and HCP, who are in the Netherlands. We've got Hydromod and Hydrometeo, who are Hydromod is in Portugal, Hydrometeo in Germany, and Water Technology is our industry partner in Australia. And then I'm from the University of Sydney. So the idea is that we're trying to also focus on the water value chain in Australia. So we're using remote sensing to look at that end of the spectrum. So our objectives and initial demonstration that is similar to what the arguments that were made by COALA. So our goals were to create this modular water monitoring system, which needs to deal with a large variety of data sets at different space and timescales, similar to what COALA was just mentioning. We want to also develop algorithms that enhance and integrate the Copernicus data, models and in situ data to quantify water availability and water use. And then try and how we develop that into an integrated calibration and validation method. So we know that the data that we actually, or the products that we produce are actually can be verified and actually work in real time. And then we want to develop and demonstrate value of that to, of course, to the end users and develop the business cases. So those are all very similar, or at least in general, very similar. I think, and that's part of what as Mark was highlighting early on, part of the European requirements. And we have similarly to COALA, we're focusing on Australia because it is an interesting case study. It has complex water governance. It's a significant water scarcity, and it's an excellent opportunity to demonstrate what we actually can achieve. And we were focusing on NAMO as an initial case study. And also, of course, similar reasons that Australia is part of this Copernicus arrangement. Okay, so the concept is that we develop essentially a water monitoring technology that integrates the Copernicus Earth observation data, things like ground radar, models, and in situ data, and we develop that into a water management toolbox, which makes the data and the services available to the users. So, for example, looking at things like water auditing, but we're also looking at water accounting, we're also looking at environmental flows. So there's several different ways of we can then see that toolbox. And examples of that we already are working on is things like water availability forecasting and look at monitoring of calamities. And so it's a combination of these three steps that we're trying to do in terms of building the project, around the project. So I'm going to jump straight into some of the research that we've done. So a lot of work has gone by our partner Hydro Meteo into try and develop gauge adjusted radar data, and we've looked at the initially at the Namoi as an example. And so you can see that after they've actually, once they run their algorithms, they've cleaned up that noisy data that's before the processing to actually having quite smooth and better understanding of the actual rainfall patterns at fine scales. And so that's part of their processing that they do within their software. And so they can develop this high quality rainfall grid with a temporal resolution of 5 to 10 minutes at a spatial resolution of 1 kilometer. So they can have some latency both in near real time, which is quality 1, but also a better quality operationally post-process with a delay of 24 hours. And in the archive is even more post-process. So it's all based on the precipitation data for the Namoi right now, but they're working on a reference data sets for globally available data and satellites. So in terms of the area, looking at areas where there are no satellites, they have now been trying to test how some of the global satellite mapping of precipitation, for example, GSMAP and JAXA, which is the Japanese agency, and some of the multi-satellite retrievals, how they compare to some of the data that we get from the radar. And some of that's very good and some of that's not very good. So that's what they're currently doing to be able to extend what we're doing with the radar to areas where there is no radar data. So they compare that on different spatial and temporal scales from hourly to daily and from 1 square kilometer to the whole catchment scale. Now, the nice thing, of course, if you get this detailed rainfall data is that you can then start integrating that into larger models, physical models across multiple scales. So we do that from the continental national scale level, which is this model, which is integrating it at a very large scale into say catchment scale models, where you can get the 10-minute basically soil moisture output, which you because of the detailed radar data that we now have, and then you can zoom in to actually areas of interest and a plot scale where you can start looking at the soil moisture behavior and how that behaves at a very local scale. So that's so you can drill down, say, from the continental scale all the way down to the local locations where you can see the detail at that within the soil moisture profiles, and all at very fine timescales. We've also done some work in more broadly mapping soil moisture, and particularly in surface and subsurface. So we're looking at both the say the 0 to 30 centimeters and the 30 to 60 centimeters, and then using some basically machine learning to try and develop maps of soil moisture. And that's of course not totally, that can only be done up to real time. So it's just an historical map, because we cannot, that's not a forecast yet. And we're just demonstrating here that for 3 contrasting climate periods, looking at very wet and very dry, we get quite different realizations of the soil moisture and what it looks like. And we have all associated uncertainty with that actual estimate. So we can tell you not only how good it is, but we can also tell you what the uncertainty is. And we have verified that at specific stations where we have observed data, basically from the soil moisture network. And you can see that overall it does reasonably well. And as a background, we put in the ORAL predictions that are from the Bureau of Meteorology for soil moisture. And you can see that both that our models does quite a little bit better than that in terms of that prediction. So this work's currently under review with the Journal of Hydrology. Our partner eLeaf is working on evapotranspiration modeling. So so this first work, this is Hidromod in Portugal who's doing that work. This has been done at University of Sydney, and this is work from eLeaf. And the first so that ET-Look, the evapotranspiration modeling, is based on the algorithm from the FAO vapor algorithm, and that's based on the work by Bastiaansen originally, and now been extended into this product that's called ET-Look. And so, as they're saying, it's combining remote sensing data with the meteorological observations and basically doing the Penman-Monteith equation, which also COALA already talked about, how they were working on some of the resistance in that. And so the applications that we put that in, WaterSense goes into water auditing, of course, and irrigation detection. So this work has been quite widely published. It's already existing, and so we're integrating that within our products. But so that's, for example, been used to then put that into doing water auditing, where we can actually look at a satellite-based water use compliance tech, because we can compare the actual evapotranspiration due to irrigation with things like the allowed water quota based on a monthly basis. Now, eLeaf has been already applying this in South Africa quite extensively. We're now basically extending that to some areas of Australia, which are different, of course, in terms of how it behaves. And it's easy to then to identify big water users. A final thing that eLeaf has been developing is actually looking at active irrigation detection. So while there is a irrigated agriculture map, that actually doesn't mean that all the parcels within that area are actually irrigated in a specific year. So what they're doing is then using an algorithm to try and identify what actually is the likelihood of those specific plots within those indicated irrigated agriculture areas that are actually irrigated. So that's some current work that they're developing, and I'm pretty excited about that myself, actually, about this work. Some earlier work that we've done at the University of Sydney is trying to predict water volumes on farm dams. This has been published in the Environmental Modeling and Software. And so the idea here is that we can use satellite data to actually predict the water volumes in farm dams, and also identify the uncertainty related to that. So what we're doing, we're actually looking at the edges of those water bodies that are the farm dams, and you can build simple relationships between the water index and the percent of water in an actual pixel. And that is, of course, the uncertainty. The uncertainty is for us in the actual edges of those farm dams. That's where the biggest uncertainty is. And if the dam gets emptier, then of course the uncertainty can increase. You get noisier data. So you can use that, you can put that in the Bayesian framework, and you can actually get posterior distributions of the actual estimate of that water edge. And then you can use that to actually identify the volume of water within that farm dam with the actually associated confidence intervals. And so that works really well if you have a 1 meter LiDAR, and we're currently trying to extend that to include where we don't have a 1 meter LiDAR, but we have DEM, we have a much coarser DEM. So in summary, we've developed a range of different algorithms focusing on observing the water balance from space at this point. And we're currently implementing and testing that with our partners in HydroNet, and other possible, there's a space missing, possible delivery platforms. So the idea there is that we have the data, we feed it into the algorithms that we develop, they become part of the toolbox, which then go into, and we use the HydroNet platform as one of our delivery systems, where we can have client dashboards, and then by discussing those client dashboards with the clients, we have feedback loops about what data needs to be collected, what new algorithms might need to be included, and how we then expand that toolbox. All right, so that's it for WaterSense. Here is just some details for just like COALA, just indicating how you might get in contact with us. Okay, let me see if I can get this back to stop share. All right, so let me see. Those of you who are online, and if I haven't allowed you to talk yet, if you want to say something, can you raise your hand? But I first want to hand over to Mark to direct questions and discussion, maybe lead the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Willem. Thanks also for the presentation. I think there has been, I do not know if there was applause. We do not have an applause button, but certainly we would push it if it were there. Yes, thanks, Daniela. And just to start a discussion, I have several topics to throw into the group, and I think we should have, if I look at the group, we should have the discussion. I will not ask individual members to respond, but just jump in to give your opinion. The first thing, the question I would like to ask is, what do you see as the most important benefit? Of course, the two projects have received funding, which is nice and which is also a benefit. But if you look at the longer term and the impact of a program like this, what do you see as the main benefits? Please, can anyone from WaterSENSE or COALA jump in?
Shall I start, Mark?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Well, for ELIV is a small SME company, and in our consortium there are several SME companies. And one of the benefits of this program is that it actually allows small companies to cooperate and build a portfolio together, which through which we can make more impact. And particularly, this is relevant for new markets where you're not active, like Australia. So you have time actually to demonstrate what you can do, what service you have. And whereas we have been doing this in South Africa for a long time and we're quite settled in there, it's always hard to start in a new country. And the nice thing about this course particularly is in the cooperation is also that it enables cooperation with research institutes in Australia and also SMEs in Australia to really build up lasting partnerships.
Thanks. Who wants to add to that?
Marco, maybe I could add just already. Yeah, thanks. Already Carlo mentioned that. Yeah, we feel that Australia like the game park for Earth observation in the field of evapotranspiration and irrigation, and probably to that extent is different from Europe because we have a very large field. We have very important dry conditions, which makes the value of water very important. And there is a very strong market of water, especially in the irrigation sector. So there is a direct link between the water users, the amount of water they use, the farm economy to a much larger extent than anywhere else in the world. Probably California has a similar situation. Nothing of that is replicable in Europe. And that was our main interest to focus on Australia since 2010. We have been working in Australia for almost 10 years as a mainly research applications. But actually that was our, when we saw the call, we said, wow, this looks like tailored for us because really offer us the opportunity to test the technology, and we couldn't really boost up this in the past due to the lack of funding.
Yeah, thanks. So your focus would be specifically, because you say it's a unique situation in Australia, apart from maybe California. So your focus would be really on the Australian market, then, or are you thinking to expand as well?
Well, the aerospace company, which is the first spin-off of the University of Naples, is already working quite largely in Italy, working with the irrigation consortia, and through European project and our very long-lasting collaboration in Spain, we work in a number of countries around Europe. So, but from the point of view of business, as SME, like aerospace, actually the possibility of expanding business in Australia is as far more attractive than any other place in the world. Of course, this is not easy to do because we need to, there is a very high technical skill in Australia available, as we see from the platea this morning. Our Australian colleagues are very aware of the tools, they process the data, they are highly experienced in all fields of science, and especially, of course, environmental science, physics science, hydrology, which are the everyday bread for them. So it is also very challenging and for us to interact with Australian colleagues on these topics.
Thanks. Anyone maybe from the Australian side to, yes, I see raised hand. Let's Daniela first and then Willem. Yeah, thanks.
I'll put that hand down. Willem was before me, but he doesn't mind if I go first, I don't think. So I guess like I'm just to let people know if they don't know who I am. My name's Danielle Baker. I'm the Director of Water Analytics in New South Wales Government, and we are a government or industry, like we're a partner in one of the projects that we've done with eLeaf, WaterSENSE project. From my perspective, so we do come, and I have a highly technical team. So thanks for acknowledging that we are pretty technically advanced in Australia. However, for this application, we had gotten together numerous years ago with other Commonwealth partners, etc., and basically hacked. So undertaken a hack to sort of think about, well, how do we want to do this? And the platform or the product has given us a way to actually achieve what we wanted to achieve without having to get all the nuts and bolts, how to, from deciding on the appropriate algorithms through to the actual functionality of the platform. And there was still lots of work for our organisation to have to do to get the product functional the way we wanted to use it, simply because of, the technical thing that we're trying to do. But our main, one of our main aims, and Ivaz is one of our attendees online. I won't put words into Ivaz's mouth, but we have compliance as one of the functions that the organisation in which Ivaz is in undertake compliance. So it's not just necessarily about scarcity of water and managing. So the organisation I'm in, we're responsible for managing water. So we want to sort of understand what's going on in the landscape. But for the organisation Ivaz is in, which is a natural resource regulator, their bread and butter is compliance, so checking that people are doing the right thing. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. No, that is very clear. Willem, sorry. Yeah.
Yes, I just want, sorry. Yes, can you hear me? Yep. So I just wanted to highlight that, I guess, for me as a university and for a university in general, I think from research, I think the future in terms of monitoring and collecting data is in satellite observation. And so while we'll continue to do observations on the ground, I feel that the future is really in the area of satellite observation and so any products or anything that's built in that area, any research in that area is really important. And of course, water is close to my heart, but that's a different thing. I think in general, we should be working on satellite information because it is freely available. It's available for everybody. And it is actually in the future, it'll allow us to minimize costs on monitoring, and it'll be allowed to actually identify where things can be done better. And so I think in general,
probably, I'm just on a Zoom call at the moment. Hang on.
Okay.
Sorry, did you want me to speak?
No, Ivaz, I just allowed you to speak just in case because Danielle mentioned your name, I thought maybe you want to add anything to it. And that's the reason why I opened your mic. But yep. I'll hand over back to Mark and let Mark run this.
let Ivers, yeah, do you want to add something, Ivers?
Sure. Sure. I'm happy to add something. You just caught me at a moment when I was answering a question at home. But anyway, so yes, we are very interested in using satellite tech not only to address, current questions that we have around compliance and water usage across the Murray-Darling Basin, but then there's also the overall questions where in Australia the water usage in the Murray-Darling Basin is capped at sort of the 1993-94 levels of usage. So the satellite data provides an opportunity to look back through time and get a better understanding of what was happening around some of these key decision points, I guess, in terms of water management across the entire Murray-Darling Basin. So yes, we are very interested in working with that. The main challenge as a technical person working with both satellite data, GIS data, and our own internal water licensing and water accounting databases is I guess, working with the small percentage of bad data that pollutes all the good data that we have in our licensing and accounting databases. So that's the biggest challenge. Incorporating the satellite data, the tech, is well established. But yeah, it's the biggest challenges remain within our own databases.
Thanks, Ivers. Anyone? If not, I would like to yeah.
Yeah, Mark, this
Yeah,
Carlos.
please.
Yes, I want to, good morning, good afternoon, Ivers. I've seen that one of the big problem that we have, as Ivers mentioned just now, is to try to provide a solution to the and data for the water accounting. In Europe, the situation is a bit different from Australia for many reasons, but also in Europe, the topic is the water accounting. How to use satellite data for water accounting. Here in Italy, for example, the most of our commercial activities is on water accounting. And I think, according to what William said before, satellite data can be the best solution to try to solve this kind of problem. We have seen a lot of procedure products ideas from the two projects, WaterSENSE and COALA, and I think that we have now the technology, and also we can bring the experience from Europe, where the complication we have a lot of complication related to the administrative part and other kind of local situation, and then I think that we have the expertise along with Austrian colleagues to solve this kind of problem. So just to sum up, we can provide the map of irrigated area, we can provide the map of water accounting in easy way. We have the expertise for that. So I think it's important that we try to find some synergies between the project and along with the local institution, because we have the expertise to solve this kind of problem.
Thanks. I think that clarifies the position of both projects with respect to this. Something that struck me when preparing for this workshop was that that there are, I hadn't seen, maybe there were other opportunities to work with the European Union and Australia cooperation opportunities. I do not know, but in the research program, I haven't seen much of it. So my next question is twofold. For what is needed for you in the longer term to continue with this project? Would that be sufficient to launch everything in the market and you are fine? And related to that, what would your advice be? How can, for instance, these projects function as an example to show that this cooperation really has benefits, so that it can be an example for other areas of cooperation between Australia and the European Union. Sorry for throwing this all at you at once, but please, who wants to react?
Mark.
Yeah, please.
I think that what you say, I mean, is one of the main, let's say, problem that COVID has determined to our activities. I think that we don't know what can be the future perspective and what will be the lifelong beyond the project life, because so far we didn't have the opportunity to travel even just once to Australia. So, and working remotely is very effective now. From one side to the other of the world, we can meet our friends and our colleagues, but I mean, I don't know if it is only my Italian feeling, but it's totally different from being there. Well, first of all, I love Australia very much. Every corner of Australia for me is always a discover. And this was for me an opportunity to test and be more closely there. I had the opportunity to spend a long time in Australia, and this has not been possible. And also, because of this, it has not been possible to tighten relationship with even with our project partners in such a way that the, let's say, the business transformation of COALA would have been possible, to my opinion, and much easier than what our perspective right now after 2 years of remote working.
Thanks. Yeah, Daniele.
So I'd say, I guess one of the virtues, please partner with us in Australia. I'm thankful. Actually, we haven't working with the ELI WaterSENSE cohort. We haven't had so much of a problem, even though we have been remote. Brian, we don't even live quite in the same time zone as each other, right? And yeah, we're doing fine in that remote sort of sense. And I was having a giggle because I thought the area in which we've applied this product, I don't travel out to, like, it's Western New South Wales, far western New South Wales. My parents-in-law live somewhere up in the north of the catchment there, and they're 8 hours drive from our house, just to, so I know it's always like the Australian thing is always like, yeah, you know, that tyranny of distance or that vast landscapes. One of the like positive things as well of partnering to sort of showcase these products and to bring them online. We have really varied, even within New South Wales, we've got varied climates. So we've dealt with northern basin or north half of New South Wales, but south half of New South Wales is quite different in terms of vegetation, climate, you know, the spectrum sort of interference that you would get through the satellite imagery. But on another positive, we're partnering for big things within Australia with the Commonwealth government and our state governments, and we've definitely got lots of funding, lots of interest in this type of product and initiative, lots of government support, and basically dollars and imperative to do it. So that's one of the positive sort of things. I guess that's really helped us partner and embrace this technology. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniela. Steven?
Yeah, on the current situation and also related to COVID, well, when we started the project, COVID started, so actually we also have not been able to travel to Australia. I'm quite pleased to see that we actually have managed to proceed with almost all activities in a good way, and I think that's also shows the importance of good local Australian partners in the project. But about the future, it's always how does the future look? I think we hope to be able to come to Australia soon, and I think in the end it's necessary, as I think Guido also said, to build relationships, and that's something that is going slower than we had intended. And from a Dutch perspective, we also have to get used to the size of Australia in that sense that the Netherlands, you take a car and you're on one side of the country in a few hours to the other side. Australia also, you deal with quite different distances. So it also requires for us a different way of working and making contact with clients in Australia, actually.
Mark, just maybe a quick response from Brian, and then I think we should wrap up this session after that.
No, just some light humor to add. We're planning to have a visit of all consortium parties to Australia in March next year. So bets on whether you think the borders will be open still.
Yes, that's what it's still in my agenda, and I think in everyone else's. So we'll just see if it happens, but we're positive. Yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, thanks. Back to you, Willem.
Okay, thank you all for that. Was a useful discussion. I think we'll just all take a 5-minute break, just because you know, it'd be good to just everybody stretch their legs. But I will, yeah, just to round this off. So just to build on Brian's comment, if you all come to Australia, I'm happy to invite you all to the pub and give you so you know, we can have some food and a drink and get to know each other better. So we'll do that next step. So maybe just have a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll go into the next session, next part, and have a discussion around that. See you in 5 minutes.
Willem, there is no sound.
Hang on, you're not hearing me. So, Julieta,
Now.
sorry, Julieta. So I think the second part is run by, I think it's run by Guido. Julieta, can you throw out the agenda? Maybe can you share the agenda again just to show?
Yep.
We'll know what we're talking about.
Yes, Guido.
Okay.
Guido is moderating the second part.
Okay, good. That's fantastic.
Do you need the agenda as well?
You can show the agenda. That'll be just be, could you just share the agenda? That might be good.
Shall we start with, are you sure that every European took a cup of coffee? It's 7 a.m. right now in Europe.
Have you managed to get your second cup of coffee? Is everybody ready?
Yeah, you're getting ready for dinner.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, then let's start. Let's start.
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing. Did
Yeah.
I stop sharing?
Yeah, you stop sharing. We're not
Okay.
seeing. Guido, take it away.
Okay, I don't need to share my screen for the time. I mean, but well, just tell you that I'm very happy to be in this workshop, especially because this Dutch component. Actually, my education was partially funded in Wageningen, is funded where I did my PhD. And I was working first at the DLO Starting Centrum that was teared down years ago in the center of Wageningen. And I was in the same corridor with Wim Jansen, so we were working very closely. And I remember very great happiness those days spent in Wageningen for carrying out my PhD under the supervision of Professor Reinder Fedes and with Massimo Menenti, which also was supervising Wim Jansen. So it's nice to see that the life, you know, brings you back every now and then to some of your roots. So there is a link between Naples and Wageningen, and I'm very happy to share with you these memories. And it is very interesting to see that what is more or less the ideas that were conceived in the remote sensing in Wageningen during the late 80s and the first part of 90s are, let's say, brought up data, results, methodology, skills that are still alive today, very, very well alive. So in this session today,
yeah, I called you also because right.
Okay, I hope everything is fine with your agenda. So this part of the workshop is dedicated more to the technical issues, and the idea was to have some live demos from the two projects of 15 minutes each. The first one, again, about COALA, that will be shown by Francesco Vuolo, which is one of the partners of COALA from University of Boku, and Oscar Belfiore, which is a researcher at University of Naples nowadays. Congratulations, a very new income now. And with great pleasure, I see my great friend and colleague, Professor Afonso Calera from University of Castilla-La Mancha, which is a pillar in the field of remote sensing in Europe in many applications, and Kate Finger from Australia is also a part. And then WaterSENSE with Brian Jackson, which will show us this water use monitoring auditing services. So Francesco and Oscar, I give to you the floor to start your demo. I don't know, well, maybe Julieta needs to interact with you for sharing the screen, or it's free.
Okay. If you agree, I will start with the live demo of COALA products and try to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, all good.
Okay. Okay. So, as Carlo and Guido mentioned earlier, the COALA products are provided through API technologies. So today I'm going to show you just an example of how these products can be ingested in pre-existing WebGIS. So in this case, let me show you the MTE platform, where MTE stands for Map Time Explorer, a robust WebGIS powered by RSpace that allows us to explore and analyze geospatial data in space and time. As you can see here, obviously, you can access the MTE platform by using a simple browser. And then after the login, you have this user-friendly framework with the different panels. For example, on the top, the toolbar tab with the main geospatial tools, whilst on the left, the table of contents. So if you agree, let's focus on the data, and where you can see here COALA products labeled as current data, which means data derived for 15 days, and historical data, where in this case, I mean data derived for the whole 2021. So you can see here different health observation and weather data, but for today, if you agree, let's focus on crop evapotranspiration, where in COALA is derived by using the Sentinel-2 data and Pema-Monti FAO 56 equation, properly adapted with the one-step approach. And you can see we are able to provide this kind of information in real time and also in forecast mode. For example, you can see here crop evapotranspiration trends expressed in millimeters per day, and as well as irrigation water requirement. To switch this panel. Okay, here with the 10-day forecast, and okay, 10-day forecast, as well as rainfall data, okay, and other weather information involved in Pema-Monti FAO 56 equation. For example, you can see here high temperature trends and wind speed ones, okay. And as I said before, we are able to provide this kind of this information pixel by pixel also for historical and archived data. For example, you can see here crop evapotranspiration trends for irrigation water requirements, and for example, rainfall data for the last 12 months. Okay, in my opinion, so we are able to provide this kind of information at different temporal and spatial scale. So from the pixel to the plot scale and to basin on the regional scale. So we are able to provide usable information for farmer, for example, for irrigation advisory services, or for example, for weather manager to quantify the water amount in Australia. So in addition, we have we are able to provide different spectral indices and biophysical parameters. So you can see here an example for the leaf area index, surface albedo, okay, FA par, okay, fractional vegetation cover, and finally STR, a new index based on shortwave infrared that allows us to better understand the soil moisture conditions of the soil plant system. And last but not least, we have also irrigated crop maps. Okay. For example, you can see here a sample of a bunch of plots located near Whitton into the Murrumbidgee irrigated areas, where you can see here different thematic classes that allows us to better understand which crops are irrigated, and then we are able to quantify quantify the water accounting. And finally, we have also nitrogen nutrition index here, just an example for terra plots in more BJ areas, where Alfonso Calera can provide you more details later on. Whilst for API technologies, let me leave the floor to Francesco Volo. Okay, that's all from my side. Okay, you're welcome.
I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah, I stopped
I
my.
can also do it.
Okay. Okay.
So I said several points. This COALA infrastructure is running on a DIAS, which is a data center hosting Copernicus Sentinel data. This is where the algorithms and the workflow that allow the production, the run of the algorithm, the production of the data are sitting. Oscar introduced the data through an easy to use graphical user interface. In reality, what COALA does is providing data through standard web request, which in a technical word, it's called application programming interface. On the screen, you see here a typical request that any type of graphical user interface can make to the COALA infrastructure. So there is a base address API, COALA project EU API. And at this address, there is not a human, but there is a computer responding to your request with some information. To allow this response to be meaningful, we need to tell the computer what we want. In this particular example, we are looking at the indicator IRP, which is irrigation probability, and we can calculate this irrigation probability. That means the probability that a given area is irrigated with certain parameter. So let's say we want to look at certain geometry and we want to see if there were parcels irrigated from this example 2021 30th of May to end of June. So we can change the parameter here, and this will change also the request that is going to be submitted. And along with the start and end, a number of other technical inputs, for example, the projection used for the output of the data, the format of the data, and so on, can submit this request, and this will ask the question to the COALA computer on the DIAS and generate a map that shows the area of that have been irrigated. Now it's a little bit different from what Oscar displayed, because you had three classes. So this is the road product to which you can apply different types of output legends, so column maps. So in this case, brown means low probability, green, darker green means high probability of irrigation. As you can see, there are not many parcels visible, just some natural vegetation. If we switch now the dates to, let's say, last 15 days, where we are pretty sure there was already crops growing and irrigation happening, you see that some of these parcels are appearing. Now you can change the column map and make it nicely as Oscar has shown, and this happens from the user side, on the user side, just replacing this indicator. So irrigation area mapping is one of, I think, the hot products. If we go down to the field scale, so working more with farmer, the management zone map, which is used for variable rate fertilizer application or variable seeding or variable harvesting. So this has multiple users in the field. It's also another product that we do. And in very similar style, you have a base API request, the MZN, which is the management zone map, a date from which to which this map should be calculated. And then again, a number of parameters that are indicator related. And you generate this map that shows the variability within a field. And again, this can be used for making irrigation, making fertilization or seeding. Another product is the evapotranspiration, also shown by Oscar. I took this because it's not shown as a map, but it's shown as a numeric indicator. So you have, again, the indicator coded is now a time series, is not a raster data set, and shows day by day, also with the forward looking, so a projection into the future. This is December 15, the amount of evapotranspiration that is expected for a given geometry. In this case, we use the polygon ID because we also have geometries in there. But a very similar case, we can take, for example, a geometry that is defined already in the request that the graphical user interface is making to the server. So it's not based only on the geometries you have seen in Oscar's presentation, but these geometries can be all coded in the request and for this receive an answer. So how does it look in a normal browser? I mean, this is how it looks. It's not formatted as nicely, but the data are there and they need to be interpreted by your or by the user graphical user interface. All this is operational. It's running on a DIAS. It's for some products still in development, but the base API and the products we have shown are already in operation. Of course, there is a learning process for getting this implemented, and there are tools for helping IT people working with such API implementation in graphical user interface to do that. So this is a Swagger Hub. It's an application used for documenting API, where also our COALA infrastructure is documented. And those are all the requests that can be made to the COALA infrastructure. Let me take just one as an example. This is, for example, an indicator. Segmentation applies a segmentation on top of a raster data set, and all the parameters in the requests are documented. And here you can also run some examples. For example, you want to indicate the indicator you're interested, the geometry, the projection, the output of the projection, the polygon ID, the start and the end. Everything is very nicely documented and is ready to use and to be tested. That's all from my side. Thanks a lot and happy to take questions.
Thank you, guys. Please, Alfonso, if you can take the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Guido. This is, I try to, okay, what is the, this is my screen. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Did you see my presentation? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is a joint presentation. This is a joint presentation. I'm Alfonso Calera, but this is a joint presentation from one side the Spanish team in charge of this presentation, and then Kate Finger from the other side. That this is the Australian part of this joint presentation. In the first thing is I'm Alfonso Calera, a professor of the University of Castilla-La Mancha, and then the things we will show in the next slides are the together work from a team that is Jaime Campoy and mainly Ana Osan, Julio Villodre, and Maria Calera from AgriSat. UCLM and AgriSat are working together in that. Please, Kate, this is your floor.
Yeah, thanks, Alfonso, and hello, everyone. As everyone said, my name is Kate Finger, and I work for the Birchip Cropping Group based in Birchip in a small country town in northwest Victoria. And we've been really excited to be part of this project. And we've connected up 3 growers that you see on your screen there, Tim, Cam, and Rodney, who have been helping with the pilot testing of these tools and services and providing really valuable feedback back to this project.
Okay, The main idea of this presentation is try to put on the table right now the assessment that has been conducted of remote sensing-based products as farmer tools in dryland paddocks, not in irrigated paddocks. Then it's a big deal, a big challenge for us, because dryland paddocks could be probably the most difficult part of this. And then we are doing that, how these remote sensing-based products can be used as tools for variable rate management, trying to do a better agriculture. And then we have three areas. First, crop yield and the capability to manage, to establish the management zones map, the MODSIM, and finally to talk slightly about nitrogen nutrition index, but how to manage the situation. And then the first idea is try to put in your mind, you have in the screen the harvesting wheat in Rodney's Deogratiat paddock, just in the past 29th of November. And then you can appreciate how we have the lucky to put the ice exactly when Rodney was harvesting, with the bright part is harvested and the gray part, dark part is non-harvested yet at this moment. And then the first idea is to work about crop yield. Crop yield is the capability to estimate. Crop yield is a trust, a key trust for farmers to put the confidence into the remote sensing. And then this is the first part to talk about. Please, Kate, explain the area and the farmers we are working.
Oh, yeah. So these are our three farmers and where they're located. So Tim's located just north of Birchip, Cam's down near Rapagna, which is not far from Horsham, and Rodney's near Neil. So for those who might not be so familiar with Victoria, that's about 3 to 4 hours northwest of Melbourne. And they are all dryland, broadacre grain growing farmers. And between them, they cover an approximate area of 15,000 hectares, growing mostly cereal crops, so wheat and barley, some oilseeds, so canola, and pulse crops like lentils and faba beans. I think that's over to you, Alfonso.
Yeah, but okay, this is the input data we use. The input data we use is the remote sensing Sentinel-2 A and B, twin satellites, and from Meteo, we use meteorological data, reference evapotranspiration and precipitation. There are this is the main input data on the models we use. And then, okay, I will show in this case, the first thing is about crop yield. We are developing 3 campaigns with the current campaign to 2021. That is you have the NDVI time series, and we estimate yield as a product from biomass B and harvest index HI, and the input data remote sensing, NDVI time trajectory, and meteorological data reference evapotranspiration and precipitation. You can see in the remember we are in the dryland areas, and in the purple curve is exactly what is the means of the farm, Rodney farm, about 21 campaign, and it's different from 19 and 20 campaigns. But we produce NDVI time series as the descriptor of crop development. You can see we are right now here at the end of the campaign, and this is the soil water balance, a water accounting soil water balance in the in the roots, in the layer roots. And then you can see how the process has been simulated across the situation, across the growing season. And then right now we produce the first forecasting yield around flowering date in this point, and the final estimation right now. Okay, and then Kate and Rodney received this report last week, and then they evaluate the quality of this report. During this year, we have frost in the part of the filling of rain flowering, and then it can introduce some distortion of the prediction of the forecasting, but we will see at the end of the process when harvest happens. Okay, another product is the management zones map. That is an example. This product is running right now in automatic mode, as Francesco showed it previously. And then this is the capability to show the different parts, mimicking like that yield monitoring into the harvest combine. But this is in this area, the Mayo Park, this is a paddock, and then the differences are related with how the evolution of this point is happening across the campaign. And then we are exploring the capability to this map to produce an advice about variable rate of fertilization plus where to pick up the points to some soil sampling for nitrogen and other tools. This product is automatically already useful for farmers to be used in the application, the platform Francesco showed. And finally, we can do this in season, looking for better nitrogen management, and then trying to get information about crop nitrogen status. And then you can see in the curve around flag leaf, this is the point, this is a critical point for nutrition. And then you can see in DBA, in the blue point and the red point, there is no difference. There is no apparent difference here and in this moment. But if we use the capability of Sentinel-2 red edge bands to produce an accounting, an estimation of nitrogen content just in the right, we can derive information about nutrition and nitrogen nutrition index that get an indicator about how the crop status in nitrogen is. And then in this case, in the flag leaf, you can see how the evolution in the red points are very different in this point, when in DBI didn't show any difference between them. And then above 1, this is a luxury situation. Nitrogen around 1 is the ideal crop status, and then below 1 is a nitrogen deficit. And finally, what is the capability of this information? This product can be introduced, it can be used by the users. Kate?
Yep, thanks, Alfonso. So yeah, I just wanted to mention here that, as you probably heard from Carla earlier on, the project has a very strong emphasis on incorporating these tools and products into existing platforms. And so one of the ones that we're going to be hopefully incorporating these into is Yield Profit, which is owned by BCG. So it's a decision support tool that simulates the effects of environmental variables and management decisions on crop yield across Australia using the MODSIM model. And a lot of the growers in our area and across Australia use it to help with their nitrogen decisions. But one of its limitations is that it's point-based information. So there's been some really exciting things that we've been doing with the COALA project, and some ability to be able to move the information that we're getting from yield profit that's point-based and make it more spatial. So the growers involved are really excited to see how these Earth observation services are going to be able to help with their decisions on farm. And so in some exciting news, hopefully next year we'll have many of these services linked onto the platform with the use of Francesco's API there. And hopefully many of the users will be able to experience these next year and give us some more feedback so we can keep tweaking it so that it's user-friendly at the end of the project.
Thank you. Okay, this is for me it's a very interesting presentation to do together with Kate. This is the first time for me to do this type of presentation. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for.
Thank you very much, Alfonso. We were running a little bit out of the time which was allocated, but I see that Kate already is replying some questions in the chat. So this allows us to save some time for the question and answer time. So please, Brian, if you could go ahead with the WaterSense presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Guido. I assume everybody can see my screen now.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I'll try to see if I can save a bit of time. So yeah, you saw Willem Verwoerd presented the one slide on each of the sort of research algorithms and applications that WaterSense is looking at. So I'm just going to delve a little bit deeper into one of them, which is currently the most advanced application, and that's the long name is Water Use Monitoring and Auditing Service. The acronym is WUMAS. The short name is the Water Auditing Application. There is actually detailed presentations about all of the toolbox and tools and algorithms and application on this. So this is just a very quick overview of all the aspects of it. So, yeah, so the water use or WUMAS application is a satellite-based compliance check, and I'll go over two of the main algorithms that are being developed for this, which is the ET-Look algorithm and the hydrologically similar pixel algorithm. But basically, at a field level, it's calculating the actual evapotranspiration due to irrigation across an entire catchment. So this is really one of the big benefits that satellite provides to us, is that we can actually provide detailed information across an entire catchment or even an entire continent or an entire country. And that's really gives you a lot of tools to make better decision planning and monitoring what's going on at a catchment level and focusing your attention where it might be needed and further work is done. And that's really the idea of this application. It's a planning tool. It compares the estimated irrigated water use at a farm or a field level with the allocated water and allows you to monitor that and identify possible big users of water or unauthorized uses of water that would then spark or trigger further investigation. We're currently doing this with the New South Wales Department of Industry and Environment through our standard cooperation and co-creation approach. So you can see the idea here is to develop a prototype with the end user being the DPIE, and we are about to go live on that version in January, hopefully by the end of January next year. And it'll be used for a year, providing feedback to the technical information and improvements there, and then finally sort of to the actual value chain and business case market through this double loop learning process. So that's where we are at the moment. We will have set it up as an initial demonstration in Namoy and currently expanding that to be covering most of the northern river basins in the New South Wales catchment that are highlighted here in yellow. That's currently what is the expansion of this application, to demonstrate field level information across that entire region, which is a rather significant size. So there's actually co-creation and also co-research in a way here. So on the left-hand side, we've got WaterSense, where I'll tell you about the ET-Look algorithm, the hydrologically similar pixel method, and then bringing that into farm units so that we can compare it with allocations and authorizations. But to be able to do that comparison, we also needed a lot of work from the DPIE, and they've spent a lot of effort and time actually setting up their own API now, linking to Water New South Wales and other data sources to provide the actual clustering information. So clustering is basically an algorithm that links properties or lots into one cluster that can all be linked to a set of licenses or authorizations of various types. Because the licensing is so complicated and complex and not linked to any particular lot or property, you cannot compare a specific field you might be observing with satellite or a specific property with fields in it to a specific license. You can only compare that at a clustering level. So the whole clustering has had to be done, is now being set up to an API that our system actually accesses and then processes all that. And currently is going to, I'll show you, provides it as an application through the HydroNet platform. But we also have our own API application that can also provide these algorithms and data sets to various users who would like to do it themselves through their own more tailored solutions. So that flexibility is there. Excuse me for going fast because I have a few slides to get through. So I'll go through the main research and algorithms in the WMS application, and then I'll show you quickly how it looks in the front end application. So each look, you've heard this before, it's using the standard Penrose-Monteith equation, solved separately for two components, for the soil and the canopy. Looks at interceptions, run on a daily time step, and also provides two soil moisture layers, topsoil and subsoil. But at the end of the day, I'm not an expert in all this sort of stuff. It results in quantitative data, which is scalable from field level to continental level and can be calibrated per area, not per image. So therefore, it's easy to apply for an entire catchment through an automated processing facility that we have set up with eLeaf. These are all the equations that are there, just to make you think that I know what I'm talking about, and so that you can refer to it afterwards, but I don't. And at the end of the day, the ET-look algorithm provides evapotranspiration like a lot of algorithms do. And that's one of the inputs that go into this application to determine irrigated water use per field. Another algorithm that is proprietary is what we call the hydrologically similar pixels. This algorithm basically takes the irrigated pixel, whether it's 10 meter or 250 meter resolution that we're looking at, and gets a lot of the static input data related to that pixel, like gradient, aspect, wetness index, soil texture, and such things, and then does a radio research around that pixel for natural vegetated areas that it knows are not irrigated and are not pastures, but are natural. And we exclude forest and riparian vegetation and wetlands that we know are not similar type of vegetation to what should be there as natural. And it basically determines the 50 nearest pixels that have a similar parameters to that, and it calculates the evapotranspiration of those 50 pixels. And the median of those 50 pixels is basically considered what would be the natural evapotranspiration. And the difference pretty much basically is considered to be applied irrigation. So at the end of the day, irrigated evapotranspiration on your irrigated pixel, the difference between that and the actual evapotranspiration is considered to be irrigated water use, and that is then parameterized and adjusted through validation processes to give you the actual irrigated water use for the time step. The final step then is to then link those to the farm units or the clusters so that you can actually provide farm or field or cluster level water use information from satellite imagery. That is then provided to a front-end application through the HydroNet platform, and the HydroNet platform allows us to develop a whole lot of dashboards that are viewable through a web browser as a subscription service or through API as a data service. So in detail, per pixel, you get irrigated water use. And the red boundaries you see here are basically all of the clusters that we get from the DPIE. And then we aggregate this information to each field and each cluster. And that's basically what I'm going to show you for the rest of this presentation, which is the front-end database. So what you're looking at now is an example of a HydroNet database where on the left, you're looking at the actual estimated water use in megaliters, and on the right, the estimated application rate in megaliters per hectare. You can search for a field or a cluster ID or a license number, and that'll then zoom you into the relevant field that you're searching for, and you can get an indication of what is the current estimated water use. You can change your dates that you're looking for on the top right-hand side here, and on the left-hand side, you can see all the different dashboards that have been set up in this application, and a user can actually, with edit rights, can actually set up their own dashboards. So this is the irrigated water use for the Namoi from satellite imagery. There's an example of zooming into a specific field that's within a specific property. Another dashboard that's been set up at the moment is then comparing that estimated water use to the actual authorized water use. So through the API, we now have access to the authorized groundwater regulated and unregulated allocations that are made on an annual basis. And we can then compare what we're picking up per cluster to what is been authorized, and actually also what is being metered by the DPIE. So this is a water use difference dashboard that gives you red alerts if you're using more than you're allocated, according to satellite data. And then the final one is a water availability balance, where as the water year goes on, you can actually have a look at what is the allocation and how much has been drawn down. So if a user is allocated X units through the satellite, we can determine that that's been drawn down, and it'll give you a red alert when you are using more than you're allocated for the year, for example. Progression on this is to try and compare it on a shorter time step by getting an estimated water use curve throughout the year. We've also done some initial validation on this, and in South Africa, there's quite a good seasonal correlation with the observed water meter observation data that we've been provided by the DPIE. At the moment, not a very good monthly correlation. In South Africa, you get a strong correlation for monthly and seasonal at the moment. So we're currently sort of looking at those results and looking at various reasons and discussing why that seasonal correlation is good, but the monthly is not. And there are a number of reasons for that. One of them, of course, is we are using the irrigated area mapping land cover data sets, and not all of the land within those polygons are actually irrigated any one year, because farmers are only irrigating portions of the land. So that has an effect, but what has a far more effect is often is the presence of a reservoir. We are getting water meter data from the resource, so either the meter that's sitting in the river or the borehole, but in many cases, the water user or the irrigator is actually pumping that into large dams in this area and not actually applying it to the field at the same time. So they'll be irrigating from their dam and not pumping out of their meter. So when we're comparing at a time step of 1 month, the meter use versus the irrigated applied use, you're not getting a correlation, because they're not actually taking the water from that pump station that's metered, they're taking it from their dam, for example. And you can see that quite clearly in this picture, where on the left-hand side, the one dam is pretty empty, and a month later, it's full again. Yeah, so here's another example where you can see, if you look at the bottom time ticker, you've got a full dam on the left, and it gets emptied slowly, and then it gets filled up quite quickly and emptied slowly again. So you actually need to get this information as part of your water balance to be able to compare what you're looking at on a field from satellite to what you're seeing on a meter. And that's one of the research that we are currently busy with at the moment, is trying to estimate the volume change from farm dams and bring that into the equation, so you can do a better comparison at each time step about what is being applied to the field and what has been taken from the resource, by bringing in the dams as well. Final 3 or 4 slides that I just wanted to quickly go over is just, as you've heard from COALA as well, who are also looking at this, is determining irrigated area mappings. So in season irrigated land use determination. And the same reason that we're looking at this is because if you're using the land use classification from the 2017, that's not necessarily what's been irrigated this particular year, and you want to be able to determine your irrigated water use estimations on the lands that are actually being irrigated. So first step in that would be trying to get a better in-season determination of irrigated lands. So there's a lot of inputs that we are using in this at the moment: evapotranspiration, precipitation, moisture, soil data, NDVI, albedo, and such. An example of soil moisture data that's been brought into the algorithm. And the output is this irrigated area map with likelihoods from high to low irrigated lands. And if you then compare that to the land use classification, you can see quite clearly that we are picking up irrigated lands within that classification, but not the entire classification. And it's quite interesting to see that in our test year of 2017, only 46% of the total land use classification in the New South Wales land use map was irrigated at a low or medium or high likelihood. And I'm probably going to stop it there. The last 2 slides are just 2 slides that you can reference later, just to give a couple of points on exactly how the current soil moisture and irrigated area mapping algorithms are derived, that we're looking at and still developing. We do have one of our technical chaps here that can answer some questions on this if that is of interest, but certainly that won't be me. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Brian. You got a lot of details and information about the project now, and let's see if there are questions. Some are already been answered in the chat about some specific topics. Maybe just to break the ice, I would like to ask Brian, which kind of thermal data are used in WaterSense, and whether these are contemporary to the Sentinel-2 acquisitions?
Yeah, thanks, Guido. I'm probably going to deflect that question immediately to Joost, who is with us as well, because that's from Eli for doing that. So you should be able to answer it better than I will.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so we do multiple data sources, and it depends a bit on the project. But currently, I think we use VEERS, and Steve, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. So VEERS has a resolution of about 350 meters, I believe. But we use a thermal sharpening method to increase the resolution, and therefore also have a comparable resolution as to the Sentinel-2 observations.
Thank you, Joost. So it seems that the presentation were providing a lot of details already. Oh, Willem, please go ahead.
Yes, I think I should ask a question, because it's something that we've been, as WaterSense, been battling a little bit with, and COVID hasn't helped. And I'm just wondering, maybe might be worth for the program, for the two projects, to kind of have some discussion about, is about how we go about collecting more validation data. So we have some validation data, and we have links into validation data, but part of being able to actually validate the products relates to building relationships with farm groups. And maybe Kate wants to reply to that, to try and maybe give us an understanding of what it would be that we would talk to with farm groups, and how we can best approach that to maybe build some better relationships and collect more validation data. I do have my own personal relationship, but I'm always interested in building bigger groups and bigger validation groups.
Okay, that's an interesting proposal. And I think that we also will need to consider a dedicated workshop in presence somewhere toward the ends of the projects, to meet us personally again in Australia with a wider in-presence participation, and to identify also avenues for collaboration between our groups. Although, of course, there is a commercial focus in both of them that we are trying to exploit, but I think Australia is so big that there is room enough for many competitors on the market. So there's really no need to think about competitions anyway. Stephen, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond also to your remarks. I think that it would be very useful to look into how we can cooperate. Of course, we are also in some sense competing, but I think Australia is, as you say, big enough, and we're not directly targeting the same things. And I think both would benefit from looking where we can cooperate in this project.
It would be very nice opportunity to meet again. And Pelgrim is still there. Okay, seems that well, there's some question in the chat. Ivers.
Guido, Ivers asked.
Ivers, yes, Ivers, please.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen, if that can be made possible, because then this will illustrate one of the issues that we face.
Yes, Ivers, I've just promoted you to panelist, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so one of the issues that we face, and this relates to things like data validation, is that I guess working with our own internal databases is challenging. And the thick black outline you see here is a property that's under a single ownership by one entity. And the beige areas are what you see here that we have identified as the clusters that fall within this particular single entity. And we can see that there are very large areas, I guess, that are blind to the clusters and the information that's in our licensing system that, you know, are clearly being cultivated and irrigated. So from my perspective, in terms of, you know, water auditing and water accounting and looking for things like non-compliance, the hardest part is working with our own internal databases and getting them into forms that will actually integrate sensibly, you know, with all the fantastic remote sensing information that can be then tied back to the land. In Australia, the hard part is because water title was separated from land title 20 years ago. And yeah, we're just still trying to catch up on trying to, you know, reattach water back to the land to be able to integrate the fantastic remote sensing information of the types that you guys have been demonstrating. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, you know, mapping irrigated area is always crucial to several extent, and also merging data from the field and not always consistent with the information we can detect from remote sensing. So this is definitely an issue. So thanks for raising this point, Ivers.
It's quite a wicked problem.
But I would like just to have a question to the audience, especially our Austrian friends, just to, if we can share a perception from looking at our data. I'm talking about the water, but maybe the question refers also to nutrients to some extent. Do you have the impression that Australian farmers probably use too much water, too much nutrients, and there can be room for reducing this, and this will greatly benefit from the economic point of view and make also our project results economically valuable and attractive for final users? Let's put it this way. I see Willem that is waving on his chair. Please, Willem.
Well, yes, I straight away want to react to that. So I agree. I totally agree. I do think that there is a tendency to over-fertilize, particularly in irrigated systems. Particularly, I'm thinking about cotton. And the reason because of that is because if you have enough water, so if you know that you have enough water, then you don't want to run the risk of a crop failure nutrients, because the crop is so valuable that you'd prefer to over-fertilize. And because Australia hasn't had the, I don't know why, I mean, I can think we can have another long discussion about this as well. We haven't had the nitrogen and phosphorus problems that Europe has had, nitrogen or United States has had in many places, that particularly in some of those northern irrigated systems when you have around cotton. That's the reason why it hasn't really been a big issue, nitrogen loss or nitrogen. So to them, to the farmers, it's an insurance policy. They go, well, I'd rather over-fertilize and make sure I have a big crop and get lots of money out of it than under-fertilize and run a risk. Now that the fertilizer price has gone up, I think a lot of farmers will be more interested in discussing fertilization. I know dryland farmers are definitely interested. Because for them, it's a much bigger risk. Their planting costs and their fertilizer costs are a much bigger part of their overall budget or their overall input-output. But for I know we have for cotton farmers, it's been a hard battle to try and convince them to fertilize less.
So you think there is no situation in Australia where too much water is actually damaging the yield, the production?
There is actually, and this is, I can respond to that straight away. And again, it's quite a long discussion by itself. I don't want to take all the time, but there is actually significant issues of water logging in particularly in heavy soils. In fact, it was so bad, and I always had to kind of giggle about this, is that there was a specific program from the plant breeding end to look at plants that were specifically suited to waterlogging and waterlogged areas, which I always went through. Well, if it's waterlogged, maybe you've got another problem than actually your plant need a better plant breeding. You know, it's an interesting thing, but it definitely is so definitely I think there are issues, but they don't seem to dominate. The dominating issue at the moment is really about water availability and about the amount of water that is available, and that is because of the last set of droughts, and that's been the real issue. In dryland farming, I think there is a lot of scope in terms of precision agriculture, and that's one of the areas that the University of Sydney has quite a long history in working in precision agriculture, and that is particularly around, you know, optimizing fertilizer applications because of the cost of fertilizer. So yes, I think there's a lot in that area. I think you're on the right track. I think there's a lot to gain from optimizing fertilizer applications and planting decisions based on climatic information and forecasting around that, because I think it is really a key issue that's driving a lot of the input output for a lot of the bigger dryland farming communities.
Yeah, I agree totally on that. And well,
Guido, this is Carlo.
Yes, please.
Just to try to find an agreement after this workshop, because in my perspective, the main problem at the moment, also due to the COVID restriction that we have, is to find data for validation calibration at basin scale, because for irrigated areas, for example, the very nice presentation provided by Brian, we need some validation data, because we need to know which fields are irrigated or not to calibrate our classification models. And I appreciate very much the way in which our colleagues from WaterSense did this task. But maybe after this workshop, maybe we can try to find a solution to share the validation data, because this is very useful for us. For example, if we try to estimate the water accounting, the irrigated area, we need data for validation, and I understand it is not easy, because also in Italy it's not easy to have this kind of data from the water manager at the district level. But maybe these two projects can try to work together to have a sort of open, according with the agreement, I understand, my open data to try to validate our different approaches for this kind of products. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, that's exactly what Willem had in mind. So we probably need to establish two ambassadors for each side, one for each side, and this will be the Sherpa going through possible agreement in sharing the data. And if COVID will not allow to travel to Australia, I candidate myself to go to Wageningen and have one airings from the marks on the Wednesday afternoon, which will be one of my best reminds of my stay in Wageningen.
Guido, you're very welcome to come to Wageningen.
Daniele.
I was going to say, this Sherpa spent a lot of time with lawyers this year on this particular topic of sharing this type of information. So yeah, I'll get together with Willem after this and have the discussion. But Ivars is obviously a custodian of data as well, and Gurmeet, who is on this call as well, Water New South Wales as custodian. So there's we're trying to do what we can in this space, but part of being engaged in the project under contractual conditions, we've been able to share a variety of information to be used for this, I guess, verification, which included, in fact, I mean, not just real measured information from the ground, and as well sort of we've got, you know, irrigation behaviour sort of questionnaires, so information from landholders provided. You guys have received some more through Cotton CDRC, I believe. So that sort of information, but also information from my remote sensing team, where they've kind of done a manual sort of satellite imagery look and done sort of that in-depth sort of approach to things, and we've used that, haven't we, Brian, against the WaterSense derived information. So we come at it a number of ways, but yeah, very tricky subject, but very keen to work with people on it.
You know, I'm sorry to interrupt. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, that's great. And I'll hand over to Guido but I think we should try and close this off, because I'm also wary of the time for all of us. And maybe we can then, as consortia, just have see if we can set up another workshop together, maybe at a time that is convenient again for all of us, that maybe we will have to work up early that time. But we can work out maybe some other time to maybe discuss it. But I'll hand over to you, Guido, to finish off this. I just think we should maybe just progress this further at another time.
Okay, thank you so much, Willem. So this is all, Julieta, from our side. I think it was a very fruitful workshop, and links are established now. And so let's look ahead to the project and future opportunity for discussion, meeting, exchange of informations. So for time being, I only can say prettige Festdag and Merry Christmas to everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, all of you.
Ciao, Alfonso.
Ciao.
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 Ciao, Brian. Bye.